What do we see over here? So we see over here a phenomenal idea that the Ein Chochma, Ein Yira is a higher level, is a deeper level, and he calls it Yira Boishas. So there's a mimer of the Alter Rebbe that explains this with a mashal. The mashal of Yira Boishas is not the bittul that the nation has to a king, but the bittul that a person has to a chacham gadol or a tzaddik gadol. When we talk about the subservience of a nation, of a people to a king, it comes from the externality of the king. He is the king. I'm scared of the king. I fear the king. Then there's something called busha. You're embarrassed. Busha comes from the essence of the person, that when you stand in front of a person who's really an exalted, refined individual, like a chacham gadol or a tzaddik gadol, you melt away. That melting away has nothing to do that he's dressed in a royal garments and he sits on a throne. No. But when you're in the presence of godless, you're just awed. I don't know if you've had this experience. You probably have in your lives, meeting, certain individuals. But, even though I never met Rabbi Soloveitchik, but I've learned so much about him, I could just imagine standing in front of him, I would be completely awed. Because here's an individual who was so, I'm talking about now Chochmah, I'm not talking, and I'm not talking about that in other words, that he's a grandson of Chaim Brisker, was a grandson of the Chaim Volozhin, and a great grandson, and all of that. I'm not talking, that's the Chitzonius, Yichus, pedigree. Oh, he comes from this rabbi. And talking about he himself as an individual who mastered Torah in such a way that this was his entire focus and his entire way of thinking, etc. It awes you. I mean, how many times do you get to meet someone of that stature, and so everyone has Chacham Gadol. That's why Chacham Gadol could be, I imagine if you stood in front of Lahavdil Aristotle or Einstein or Beethoven. I mean, if you know in those areas, you're on, and you completely lose your presence is completely annulled, bottled. Why? Not because of the chitzonius, because of the pnimius of the person. Right? So we're talking about, the Alter Rebbe calls it here in Tanya, Yirei Boishas. Yirei, a fear, it all coming from busha. Busha in a healthy way, busha, not in a decrepit way, in an unhealthy way. Talking about positive busha. I told you once, and when I was a bacher, I came into my dormitory room in Crown Heights, and there was another bacher from Eretz Yisrael, and I went to sleep, tried going to sleep. He was standing outside of the dorm. It was a narrow corridor, and he was facing the back exit, the emergency exit, and saying Krishma Shalamita. And I'll never forget how I couldn't fall asleep. I was so embarrassed. Here I'm laying, I said a quick Krishma Shalamita, or even if I didn't say quick, I said, but this bacher was my age, and he's, elsewhere. And where am I? I'm under the blanket trying to go to sleep. I remember I was very embarrassed. The busha doesn't come from the chitzay. It's not How much information did he know? How studied is he? How knowledgeable? That's not what's creating the busha. The busha is coming from pnimius ha'adam. So number one second, he said, 1 second. Number one, to realize, to come to this feeling and understanding, it takes on your part a sensitivity. That's why we call it Yiri Ilah. It's a different category. Yiri Tata and Yiri Ilah are two different worlds. It's not that Yiri Ilah is more of Yiri Tata. Totally wrong. That's what Alter Rebbe says. He said it so briefly, but that's the pshat over here. That's what he's teaching us. Yirei Ilah is a different category. Just one more thing, and then I'll let you say Isser. The Rabbeim, the Lubavitcher Rabbeim, at different times, people had, Hasidim and others had issues and questions. And especially at one Farbrengen, the Frierdiker Rebbe, someone had said something about the Rebbe Rashab, his father. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, don't start up with Tsarske Mishpocha, the family of the Tsar. Watch your tongue. And he said this to a big chassid. A chassid who gave a lot of money to the Rebbe. A chassid who was glued to the Rebbe. But at some point, and the Frierdiker Rebbe said to him, with kind of a little chutzpah, you're starting up with the wrong family. And he didn't mean it, hey, we're the mafioso, we're going to get back at you. That's not what he meant. What he meant is, you're talking here a different category. So you're right. From where you're coming from, you don't understand it. That's the point. If you go about Yirei Ilah from the vantage point of Yirei Tata, it won't make any sense. So the Alter Rebbe is saying that Yirei Ilah isn't just an enhancement of Yirei Tata. Like he said earlier, there's katnus of Yirei Tata and there's gadlus of Yirei Tata. Lower, less, and more. No, Yirei Ilah is something completely different, and that's why he calls it Yirei Boishus and Yirei Pnimis. Yes, sir.
This conversation reminded very much of the dispute between Reb Zusha and Reb Melech regarding the starting point in Avodah, whether it's from recognizing the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu or the lowliness of man. The lowliness of man being the Yireh HaBoishus, and the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu being the recognizing the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Reb Zusha, and who else did you say?
His brother, Reb Melech.
Oh, Reb Melech. I would say yes and no to what you're saying. I'll tell you why. Because the Yireh Boishus doesn't mean, not the way the Alter Rebbe says it. I'm not saying that the Taich is not an emes, a Taich, from where Reb Zusha is coming from, Reb Melech is coming from. It's not the loneliness of man. He's talking here about
vis-a-vis. It's the loneliness of man vis-a-vis the Borei Olam.
Yeah, but what's the emphasis? The Alter Rebbe is emphasizing.
What's the emphasis? Is how much I owe the Eibishter and how great the Eibishter is.
I'm not sure that
it's nuanced.
It's nuanced. Of course, it's nuanced, but I'm not sure that's the pshat here. That would be a good example here. But
okay.
Here we're talking about Yireh Boishus coming. Yireh Boishus coming from not busha because I'm low, not because you're low. Just because the Eibishter is the Eibishter. God is God, and therefore I'm like embarrassed.
Humility, no?
What?
What? Humility. It's a form of humility.
Of course, the form of your question is what's causing the humility. So Isser is saying, if I understand correctly, that the humility is coming because he realizes how low he is. Is that right? What you're saying?
Well, it's a lowliness in relationship to Hakadosh Baruch Hu's greatness, as opposed to Hakadosh Baruch Hu is so great, and therefore it's my lowliness given Hakadosh Baruch Hu's greatness. I don't know that I'm not explaining it well.
Okay.
What about in comparison, like Yira, like when we talked about Rebbe, we talked about this months ago about awe, meaning this fear of God. But if we're not talking about fear, like he's gonna strike you down with lightning.
No, we're not talking about fear at all. In both scenarios, we're not in Yira Tato, Yira Talo. We're not. No. We're talking here about a different category of Yira. That's why it's called Yira Ilah, meaning it doesn't come from meditating either on God's greatness or how God pervades the world. It's there's only God, and since there's only God, like, where do I come into the picture over here? It's like Hasidim, and Chabad was this way, maybe it was other Hasidim, they would try to hide their face when they saw the Rebbe. When we were Bacharim, we would hide behind people. We would say, we don't want the Rebbe to see all of our schmutz that's inside our head. And the Yerei Boishes, so it's a sense, so you use the word humility. Yeah, it's a form of humility. Maybe I'll see if I can find any good writing in English on this to share. Go ahead, Hillel.
I just want to add a little postscript to what we were talking about. That story of Reb Zusha and Rabbi Elimelech, that they brought this question as a question of avoda to the Maggid, to their Rebbe the Maggid.
Yes.
To ask him which is the best path to begin your avoda, the contemplating the godless of Hashem or contemplating the shiftless of Adam.
Yes.
So the Maggid response was, he said, the contemplating the shiftless of Adam is the higher path, but very few people can do it. So for most of us, the beginning of avoda is contemplating the godless of Hashem.
Right. But what I am thinking about is that both Reb Zusha and Reb Elimelech's avoda is not the Balatanya's avoda, and he's talking about something very different. That's all true, and it's all holy. I believe he's talking about something deeper. In other words, I would say, this is my gut feeling, that both Reb Zusha and Reb Elimelech's their positions is within Yira Tato. And over here, the Balatanya in the section that we're at now, he's talking about Yira Ilah, which is a very different category. Not better or worse, just a different category of Yira Ilah, of Yira. Yira Bushes. And remember, he says also the words, it's called Pnimius, not Chitzonius. So in other words, my humility is not predicated on either realizing how awesome God is or how low I am, because that means that the I still exists in some form. He's talking about where there is the consciousness has reached a point where there is no I, and this is a very hard avodah. Menashe, you want to say something? No. Okay.
No, just listening.
Okay. Chevra, good conversation, deep thought, and let's think about it overnight and make sure you can't fall asleep because you're thinking about this. Have a good day.
Hey,
Love you all. Shalom. See you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.